Have you ever wondered why the letters are shaped the way they are? Perhaps you thought that they were just random abstract shapes. Or maybe you even knew that they borrowed their shapes from the Greek alphabet. But the shapes are actually older than that, and they have their root in an ancient form of Hebrew. In this ancient system, each letter has the shape of an animal or an item or a body part. From these letters, we can have a deeper understanding of the Bible and unlock secrets about reality itself. There are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. The first one is Aleph, A. It's in the shape of a bull's head. It means strength or chief, the highest, the first, or the primary. Next is Bet, B. It's in the shape of a house or a tent. The third letter, Gimel, is a gamel or a camel. At first glance, the shape might not exactly look like a camel, but the shape is actually the bent knee of a camel. The camel was the primary beast of burden for long-distance travel across the ancient world. It symbolized endurance and the capacity to carry heavy loads over great distances, as well as resilience under harsh conditions. In order for the camel to bear its burden, it must first bend its knee. The act of the camel kneeling represents submission, service, and the willingness to lower oneself in order to be useful. The Hebrew word to bless, barek, also means to bend the knee. The letter Gimel then also has to do with acts of service, bearing burdens and bending the knee in submission, as well as the number 3 and the stability of the triangle. The fourth letter, Dalet, D, is a delet, a door, or a dog, a fish. Hey is a little man going, hey! Vav is a fish hook. It hooks things together and acts as the word and. Zayin is a sword, or a sickle, or a plow, as in, you beat your plowshares into swords. Chet is a fence or a wall. Tet is a wheel or a snake in a basket. The word for hand is yad, and a yod is a yad, a hand. Kaf is the palm of a hand. Lamed, L, is an ox goad or a shepherd's staff, or perhaps a wizard's staff because it has to do with leading you somewhere and with knowledge and learning. Mem, M, are little waves of water, mayim. Nun, N, is a nakash, a snake, or nun in Aramaic is a fish. Samek is a tent pole. Ayin is an eye. Pei is a mouth. Sade is a little plant growing up out of the ground. Kof is the eye of a needle. The modern letter Q is shaped like a little oval with a squiggly line going through it because it's the thread going through the eye of the needle. Resh, R, is a rosh, a head. Rosh also means the beginning of something. Shin are teeth or fire. And finally, Tav is a mark or a cross or an X. But going forward, you're going to want to take note that Hebrew is read backwards from modern English. So it's read right to left as opposed to left to right. In the ancient world, there was less standardization to the direction that people read. It could be right to left to right or top to bottom, and consequently some of the letters may look flipped from modern English letters. Each letter is also a number, so it has a fixed numerical value as well as its ordinal number. The shape of a letter can sometimes be made up of other smaller letters. Each has an ancient pictographic symbol which depicted an object, an animal, or a body part whose name and image carried an inherent meaning. Typically, the name of the letter is also the Hebrew word for the object which the letter represents. The first time that the letter shows up in the Torah, or the first time it begins a word, or a letter's place value can also point at its meaning. Think of all of creation as a sandwich. Before you can make a sandwich, you have to decide what ingredients will go on the sandwich. A PB&J requires different ingredients than a corned beef Reuben with sauerkraut. The letters are the ingredients by which the creator spoke the cosmos into existence, the vibrational tones that shape reality. Why is nylon called nylon? The stuff that your socks are made from? It's because the DuPont company had offices in New York and in London. Ny for New York, lon for London. That's it. No deeper meaning than that. For most languages, a word is just a label. Ancient Hebrew is different than any other language, except for one. I'd suggest that Hebrew is most like the chemical language. If I say water, it doesn't tell you anything about the substance. But H2O, two hydrogen molecules and one oxygen molecule, defines the substance. It tells you something about its nature and about its composition. I'm going to offer that ancient Hebrew works in a very similar way. In the beginning, God spoke reality into existence, and the letters are the building blocks of the cosmos. Just like you can look at H2O and know something about the nature of water, if we analyze the meaning of a word by its letters, we can find out deeper secrets about the nature of reality. Pop quiz. What's the first verse of the Bible? Too easy, right? Everyone knows this one. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But what if I told you that there's a word in that very first verse of the Bible that's left untranslated into English? Bereshit bara Elohim. In the beginning, God created... But what's this word that's left untranslated? Et. Aleph Tav. The first letter and the last letter of the alphabet. The beginning and the end. Before God could create the heavens and the earth, he first had to create the letters Aleph through Tav to form words to speak the world into existence. Before anything, God created Et. Aleph through Tav, the beginning and the end of the alphabet and the beginning and the end of everything. The word etymology, the study of the meaning of words, comes from Greek etymologia, the true sense of a word, from etymon, to speak of or to study something, and etymos, the true or the real. Could it be that a deeper meaning is hidden right in plain sight in the first verse of the Bible? And most people never realize because they've neglected to study a word. It is the glory, the kavod of Elohim, to conceal a word. And it is the glory of kings, melachim, to examine a word. The Hebrew word devar means word, speech, or thing, because the word is the thing. If you add an M, it becomes midbar, the desert or the wilderness. The desert being the place of revelation of the Torah at Sinai, this alphabet is literally born of the desert. The word ot means a letter of the alphabet. It begins with aleph, which is hooked with a vav to tav. Aleph through tav, just like the alphabet. Rosh, a head or the beginning of something. Devar, a word or a thing. Emet, truth. The beginning of your word is truth. The beginning of a word is emet. Aleph mem tav, the first, middle, and last letter of the alphabet. Truth is the beginning, the middle, and the end of the alphabet. Let's go back to kindergarten and learn our ABGDs. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. Ox, house, camel, and fish or door. Why is a fish also a door? I have a theory about this. In the ancient world, a door is a tent flap, basically a slit or an opening. And if you live in the ancient world, what is your relationship with a fish?
Knife goes in, guts come out. Knife goes in, guts come out.
Spare my life, and I will grant you free will.
Knife goes in, guts come out.
Knife goes in, guts come out. That's what a Dalit's all about. A Dalit is also the number 4. And in Greek, 4 is tetra. And incidentally, a tetra is a common type of freshwater fish found in home aquariums. These ancient pictographic Hebrew letters are then simplified into Phoenician script, which is then transmitted all across the Mediterranean. And so Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet became Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta. The shapes of the Greek letters were then further simplified by the Etruscans, which the Romans then later used as the basis for the Latin alphabet that we're familiar with. That part of the history isn't too controversial. However, what is more controversial is the undeniable influence that these letters and the concepts that accompany them had on the shapes of Proto-Germanic runes. We'll look at the rune Onsus and its relationship to Aleph in a future video, but its shape, like Aleph's, is 2 points connected by a single line. You can probably also see how the ancient shape of the letter Gimel, probably along with the letter Kaf, informed the shape of the letter C. And so, an ABGD Aleph-Bet became an ABCD alphabet. Allow me to take you one step further into madness. The shapes of our numbers are also informed by these letter shapes. The shapes of 1, 2, 3, and 4 are related to Aleph, Bet, Gimel, and Dalet, or Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta. Aramaic script, a later offshoot of Phoenician script, travels eastward with Persian traders, eventually reaching India. There it inspires the ancient Indian Brahmi script, which later develops into Hindi with Hindi numerals. These Indian numerals become Arabic numerals to become the number shapes that we're familiar with today. The shape of the number 1 is 2 points connected by a single line, just like Aleph in the rune Onsus. The number 2 is inspired by Bet. The shape of the number 3 is related to Gimel or Gamma, and the number 4 is a variation on the Hebrew letter Dalet and the Greek letter Delta. At first, one might be inclined to assume that there's absolutely no relation between Hebrew and English letters, let alone with Germanic runes. But if you squint your eyes and you know what you're looking at, then the pattern is undeniable. 22 letters. Some, like L and M, have changed very little in 3,000 years. But that's too much for now. Remember, we're back in kindergarten, so we're going to take it slowly, and we're only going to focus on 2 letters for now. And what better way to learn the Hebrew Aleph-Bet than to start with the first 2 letters, Aleph and Bet? The word alphabet comes from the Greek letters Alpha and Beta, and Alpha and Beta come from Aleph and Bet. Everyone has a mom and a dad, and the alphabet is no different. Aleph and Bet, A and B, are the daddy and the mommy letters. The shape of the letter A comes from a simplified pictograph of a bull or an ox's head. The Hebrew word Aleph means a head of cattle, as in 1,000 cattle, and Aleph also is the number 1,000. The bull is an ancient symbol of the power of the active, masculine creative energies. In the ancient world, the bull was a symbol of strength as well as male virility. The bull also thrusts its horns upwards, so it has a rising energy, an alpha energy, if you will, as opposed to a downward energy or a beta energy. Which brings us to B, Bet or Beta. It's the downward feminine creative energy. A Bet is a bait, a dwelling, a tent, or a house, or a temple, or a beton, a womb. The shape of a Bet, especially a cursive bet, can also be seen as a pregnant belly. In Hebrew, you distinguish a vet from a bet by putting a little dot inside of the bet's tummy, a little baby inside of the bet. Together, these letters are going to represent the male and female creative energies coming together. If we take these first two letters of the alphabet, Aleph and Bet, and put them together, we get the word Av, which means father. Aleph meaning primary or chief. Bet meaning a house. The father is the chief of the house. The father is the primary figure of the house. The father or the forefather is the primary genetic figure in a lineage or a house. Modern Hebrew, which despite its name isn't very modern, and English letters share a common ancestry in the Phoenician script. And so over time, both developed separate from each other, but carrying similar ancestral markers. And that's how a bull's head became both the letter A and the letter Aleph. And that's how a diagram of a tent or a pregnant belly became the letters B and Bet. The story of how all this started is going to be necessary to understand if we're going to unlock the deeper mystical significance of these letters. Believe it or not, it starts with turquoise. Before anyone came up with the idea of letters, writing was a series of cuneiform and hieroglyphs. To know a word meant you also had to know the hieroglyph that went along with it. So if you knew 1,000 words, you also had to know 1,000 symbols. So language and writing were only available to certain classes. But if you're a laborer or an ordinary person, you can't be bothered to learn 1,000 hieroglyphs. A little over 3,000 years ago in the Egyptian New Kingdom, turquoise and copper miners in the Sinai between Egypt and Canaan started using a tool that would change the world as we know it. In a time where illiteracy was the norm and reading and writing meant memorizing 1,000 hieroglyphs, even the simplest person could make wavy lines for water, a curved stick, a fish, a little man going, "Hey!" They took everyday items like an ox head or the outline of a house and turned them into symbols that each stood for one single sound, so that by knowing only a few of these shapes, you could form thousands of words. The earliest traces of the script show up in rock carvings found in the Sinai area. They represent some of the earliest known examples of alphabetic writing. Discovered primarily at Sarabet el-Qadim in the southern Sinai Peninsula, Egypt, these inscriptions are over 3,000 years old. The site was a major Egyptian turquoise mining operation, and they would leave messages for other miners to pay attention for this, or dig here, or don't dig here. But these laborers also left the name of their god chiseled in stone, El. You can clearly make out the bull's head of the Aleph, and the Lamed is changed very little in 3,000 years. You can still recognize the letter El. El, the word for God. The 6th century Christian traveler Cosmas the Monk even wrote of seeing these very same rock carvings in his work Christian Topography. And when they had received the law from God in writing and they had learned letters for the first time, God made use of the desert as a quiet school and permitted them for 40 years to carve out the letters on stone. Wherefore, in that wilderness of Mount Sinai, one can see at all their halting places all the stones that have been broken off from the mountains inscribed with Hebrew letters, as I myself can testify, having traveled in these places. Certain Jews, too, who have read these inscriptions, informed me of their purport, which was as follows: the departure of so-and-so of such and such a tribe in such and such a year in such and such a month. Just as with ourselves, there are travelers who scribble their names in the inns where they have lodged. And the Israelites, who had but newly acquired the art of writing, continually practiced it and filled a great multitude of stones with writing, so that all of the places were full of Hebrew inscriptions, which, as I think, have been preserved to this day, for the sake of the unbelievers. Anyone who so wishes can go to these places and see for himself, or at least can inquire of others about the matter, when he will learn that it is the truth that we have spoken. When the Hebrews, therefore, had at the first been instructed by God and then had received a knowledge of letters through the tables of stone and had learned them for 40 years in the wilderness, they communicated them to their neighbors, the Phoenicians, at the time first when Cadmus, the king of the Tyrians, from whom the Greeks received them, and then in turn the other nations of the world. The Phoenicians were master seafaring traders who lived along the narrow coastal strip of what is now modern-day Lebanon. They weren't a single unified empire, but what they were was a network of independent city-states like Tyre and Sidon, whose real power came from sea trade. The Phoenicians built some of the finest ships of the ancient world, and they used them to sail throughout the Mediterranean and beyond, establishing trade posts and colonies. The Phoenicians built an empire not on conquest, but on trade. They traded cedar from the trees of Lebanon, exotic ivory from India, copper, tin, and blown glass. But the export they were most known for was Tyrian purple, also known as royal purple and imperial purple, a purple dye made from sea snails of the Mediterranean that they were famous for. This purple dye was so highly valued that the color became associated as a status symbol of royalty, of wealth, and opulence. For a period in the Roman Empire, only the emperor himself was permitted to wear Tyrian purple. The phrase "born in the purple" is used to mean members of a royal family who were born during the reign of their parent. In ancient Greek, the words for the color purple, phoenix, the immortal firebird, the phoenix, that regenerates from its own ashes, and the seafaring civilization of the Levant, Phoenicia, all share the exact same root. The Greeks referred to the Phoenicians as Phoenikes, likely meaning the purple people. I suppose. The Phoenician trade networks linked the ancient world together. Ancient Egypt, Greece, Mesopotamia, and possibly even more distant lands. Traveling past the Iberian coast, it's likely the Phoenicians traded with ancient Britain for tin. And this Canaanite culture from the Levant likely had contact with and may have even influenced the cultures of the Proto-Germanic and Scandinavian peoples. Everywhere that the Phoenicians went, the alphabet traveled with them. It was adopted by the Greeks, who around the 8th century BC added vowels and turned it into the foundation for Western writing. This became the basis for the Etruscan alphabet, and ultimately the Latin or Roman alphabet, to eventually become the letters that we use today. Germanic runes are commonly linked with Etruscan scripts themselves, derived from Greek and Phoenician models. Aramaic, a later offshoot of Phoenician, may be linked through Persian trade with the development of the ancient Indian Brahmi script, which is adopted in the 3rd century BC and is the ancestor of most modern Indian scripts, such as Devanagari. Now might be a good time to familiarize ourselves with a general overview of the major kingdoms and empires during this period. Egypt, one of the most powerful civilizations of the ancient world, exerted its tremendous cultural and political influence over the Levant for centuries, especially during the New Kingdom period when it controlled much of Canaan as a vassal region. To the north were the Hittites, centered in Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. This Indo-European speaking empire rose to prominence in the late Bronze Age. The Hittites frequently clashed with Egypt and interacted with the city-states of the Levant through warfare, treaties, and trade. The Mycenaeans were the earliest Greek-speaking civilization of the Aegean world. In comparison to the ancient Greeks of the classical period, the Mycenaeans represent an earlier, more decentralized era of Greek civilization. The later classical Greeks looked back to the Mycenaean era as a heroic, semi-mythical past preserved in the Homeric epics of the Iliad and the Odyssey. While the Mycenaeans laid the cultural and linguistic foundations for later Greek civilization, the alphabetic writing system that became central to classical Greek literature and its subsequent development was adapted from the Phoenician letters, adding vowels to create the classical ancient Greek alphabet. In Mesopotamia, the Babylonians, heirs to the older Sumerian and Akkadian traditions, built powerful empires that rose and fell across the centuries. Babylon and later the Assyrian Empire were powerful forces in the ancient Near East, shaping trade routes and cultural exchange across the region. The Mitanni were a late Bronze Age superpower, forming alliances with Egypt and clashing with the Hittites. Centered in northern Mesopotamia, modern-day Syria, Turkey, and Iraq, their territory overlapped and interconnected constantly with Semitic-speaking peoples, as there was no hard border between Semitic and non-Semitic worlds. Only overlapping spheres of influence, shared trade routes, common cultural practices, as well as intermarriage. The Mitanni kingdom had a ruling elite that spoke an Indo-European language related to Sanskrit. The Mitanni's military was highly feared, specifically for its sophisticated use of light horse-drawn chariots. They are credited with introducing Indo-Aryan horse breeding and domestication to the Near East. While it may seem incongruous that a horse-riding chariot-using culture, speaking a language closely related to Sanskrit invoking a Vedic-like god, had established itself in the heart of the ancient Near East only a few hundred miles from the Levant, this linguistic and cultural outlier underscores the remarkable mobility of culture and interconnectedness in the late Bronze Age. The alphabet emerged in this environment of cultural exchange and hybrid civilizations. The term Semitic is fundamentally linguistic. It refers to a major family of languages spoken across the ancient Near East and parts of North Africa. These include Akkadian, used in Mesopotamia, as well as Canaanite languages such as Hebrew, Phoenician, Moabite, Aramaic, Arabic, and others. This classification was proposed by language scholars of the 18th century. In the ancient world, however, the concept of Semitic as a distinct ethnic or cultural category did not exist in the way that we use it today. People primarily identified by their city, kingdom, tribe, or religious affiliation, rather than by a language family label. The ancient Near East was characterized by trade, intermarriage, conquest, and cultural exchange. There was no rigid boundary separating Semitic speakers from non-Semitic speakers. This fluidity is important when studying the ancient world. The ancient Hebrew language and its script did not develop in isolation, but within a multilingual landscape where Semitic and non-Semitic influences constantly interacted. Understanding that Semitic is primarily a linguistic descriptor, rather than a fixed ethnic or racial one, helps us see the ancient world more accurately. When we say something is Semitic, we're talking about language families, groups of languages that descend from a common ancestral language. Semitic languages include Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic that trace back to a Proto-Semitic language. By contrast, Proto-Indo-European is a reconstructed ancestral language of another major language family that includes Greek, Latin, Sanskrit, Hittite, and most other modern European languages including English, as well as Persian and many Indian languages. English, Spanish, Russian, Greek, Persian, and Hindi all have their roots in Proto-Indo-European. About 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, Nomadic Eurasian steppe cultures migrated in different directions. Some went into Europe, and over centuries, their descendants developed the Celtic, Italic, Germanic, and Slavic language branches. Indo-European migrations reached across Central Asia, reaching as far as the border between China and Afghanistan, becoming the culture later known as the Tocharians. Many others who traveled east across Central Asia eventually became the Indo-Iranian or Indo-Aryan branch, from which Persian, Kurdish, Hindi, Bengali, and many other languages would emerge. Modern archaeology and ancient DNA studies have provided additional evidence for migrations from Eurasia. The Indo-Aryan migration is supported by evidence from linguistics, archaeology, and ancient DNA studies. The oldest Indo-Aryan language preserved in writing is Vedic Sanskrit, the language of the Rig Veda. Now, over half the population in the world speaks an Indo-European language. These include English, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Russian, Hindi, Bengali, Punjabi, German, and Persian. Proto-Indo-European is often called the mother language, because many modern languages can trace their ancestry back to it, but also because the word mother is one of the clearest examples of the ubiquity of the Indo-European language. Whether you say mater or mutter or mother, the word for mom is remarkably similar across languages, suggesting a common origin. The word mother serves as evidence that Proto-Indo-European was the ancestral language from which these other related languages developed over thousands of years. So a language is considered Semitic if it descends from a Proto-Semitic ancestor. A language is considered Indo-European if it descends from Proto-Indo-European. Their classification depends on historical ancestry, not on geography, culture, religion, or ethnicity. The Hittites, for example, spoke an Indo-European language but were deeply enmeshed with the Semitic-speaking kingdoms. The Mitanni kingdom in northern Syria had an Indo-European-speaking elite ruling over a largely Hurrian and Semitic-speaking population. The Levant sat at the center of this crossroads for the ancient world, where ideas moved freely. The ancient world was not divided into boxes labeled Semitic and Indo-European. Cultures mixed constantly through trade, diplomacy, marriage, conquest, and migration. The idea that one group was inherently distant from another ignores the historical evidence of interconnectedness. The Mycenaeans, the Hittites, the Mitanni, and the Persians all came from this Proto-Indo-European ancestry, and they would have interacted with and traded ideas with the peoples of the Levant that we now term as Semitic. This obsession with drawing rigid racial lines between Semitic and non-Semitic people is a modern projection that does not reflect the ancient world. The ancient Near East sat at a crossroads of culture. Despite all of this, there is a demographic of people who will never believe me that their alphabet is Hebrew. They will never believe that a Canaanite people may have shaped their European ancestors' culture, or that any good can come from a Semitic culture or from a Semitic people. There is a literal anti-Semitism in the literal sense of dismissing the value of Semitic culture and language that permeates online discussions as well as academia. In the West, we come from a tradition of English and Greek, and therefore place higher value upon the accomplishments of the Proto-Europeans. After all, in historical reality, most of us are descendants of Proto-Indo-European speakers who managed to spread their language across the known world. So who were these horse-riding proto-white people who carried the genetic markers for white skin and blue eyes, who managed to conquer just about everywhere they went and established their language as the dominant language? I think this is as good a time as any, because we need to talk about the Aryans. Yes, that's right, Aryans. Proto-white Ubermensch who invented the wheel and immediately turned it into a war machine. In their chariots, they rolled across the ancient world like an unstoppable force, conquering everything in their path, subjugating the inferior races and replacing them with their Chad haplotypes, banishing the old night of Stone Age pagan gods and replacing them with the worship of their god, casting languages to the dustbin of history to replace them with their language. And the chariot made all of this possible. What powered these Ferraris of the Bronze Age? Why, horses, of course. The Aryans domesticated the horse and the dog and used both as instruments of conquest. And with wheels spinning and hooves thundering, they brought civilization wherever they went. And they went everywhere, from the Indian subcontinent to the Scandinavian peninsula. From the shores of Britain to the borders of China, they established civilization throughout most of the known world. Migrating out of the area between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, these people spread across vast distances, carrying their traditions, beliefs, their genetics, as well as their languages with them. In Europe, their descendants became the Greek, Latin, Celtic, Germanic, Baltic, and Slavic-speaking peoples. Latin would eventually develop into the Romance languages, spoken across much of southern Europe, such as Italian, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. Germanic languages would spread throughout northern Europe and Scandinavia, eventually reaching Britain, where the English language developed from it. Traces of this past ancestry remain in our words, our customs, as well as our DNA. If we were to take a map of the areas of Indo-European migration, as evidenced by the areas where Indo-European languages developed, paying particular attention to the area around the Mediterranean, and compare it with a map of the civilizations of the ancient Near East, one can clearly see that the Indo-European migration overlaps with these civilizations. The westward Indo-European expansion went into Europe, where the Indo-European speaking groups eventually became the ancestors of the Celtic, Germanic, Italic, Greek, Baltic, and Slavic peoples. But a south and eastward expansion reached Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, as well as Iran and South Asia, where Indo-European languages appear among the peoples such as the Hittites, the Mitanni, Persians, and Vedic Indo-Aryan speakers. When we see that the distinction between Semitic and Indo-European peoples is only defined by their language ancestry, and not factor in their shared culture, trade, exchange of ideas, or intermarriage, the distinction becomes rather arbitrary, as if there's an imaginary line somewhere in Turkey that separates white people from Semitic people. To suggest that it's a controversial idea that contact and cultural exchange occurred in one of the most connected regions of the ancient world seems like it's rooted more in maintaining an agenda than it is in observing reality. Consider, for instance, what an outlier the Mitanni are. You have a horse-taming Indo-European people riding chariots and speaking a language related to Vedic Sanskrit in the Middle East. A Bronze Age kingdom in Syria invoking Indra, Varuna, and Mithra, names of deities later preserved in the Indian tradition. In the modern era, we underestimate the enormous distances that people traveled in the ancient world. And the ancient Near East was a crossroads where languages, religions, and ethnicities mixed freely. The Mitanni civilization existed just south of the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, not far from the Caucasus area. A Caucasian is someone who descends from the natives of the Caucasus, an area that's located between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. It includes modern-day Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and parts of southern Russia. The term Caucasian as a racial classification originated in the 18th century, when German anatomist Johann Friedrich Blumenbach classified humanity into 5 principal races. Because, of course, it was a German. And is it a surprise to anyone that they did not include Jews as Caucasians, and they described them as having a permanently degenerate nature and classified them as Mongoloids? Bro, Caucasian literally means Caucasus Asian. Ponder this. The reality is that many of the loudest voices about strict racial classifications couldn't find these places on a map if their radical race theory depended on it. The fact that white people come from an area that's closer to Syria, Turkey, and Iran than it is to Norway, Sweden, or Denmark is completely lost on them. These cultures that they're so proud of have their origin in the Eurasian subcontinent, not in Agartha. If you're looking for evidence of a lost civilization, one whose collapse forced its survivors to scatter, rebuild, and start over in new lands, I would start at the bottom of the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. If there was ever a culture advanced for their time that was erased from history and relegated to myth, where the memory of that catastrophe that wiped out their ancestors was carried by refugees of a lost civilization, my bet would be that it was flooded long ago somewhere in this region. Allow me to ask you a question. Have you ever noticed that people in the northern part of India have lighter skin and lighter eyes, while people in the southern part of India look different? What about this white-skinned, blue-eyed girl? Where do you think she's from? What if I told you that she was from Syria? Or this white-skinned, blue-eyed girl? Where do you think she's from? I'll give you a hint. Dun-dun-dun, 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 dun-dun-dun. She's from the Kashmir region. How many of you are old enough to remember this famous National Geographic cover with the Afghani girl with piercing green eyes? What about this girl who's whiter than most white people that I know? She's a Kurd from between Iran and Iraq. Or this white-skinned, blue-eyed girl. What part of Europe do you think she's from? Psych, she's from the Bumburat region of Pakistan. Or this girl. What part of the Middle East do you think that she's from? Psych, she's an indigenous Norwegian, the whitest white people on Earth. Or this blue-eyed girl. Where do you think that she's from? What if I told you she's from the Wakhan corridor on the border between China and Afghanistan? In China, Uyghurs can have blue eyes and blonde hair. Oh, but surely the image of tall, Chad, white-skinned, blue-eyed Aryan supermen rolling across the steppes on horse-powered chariots and using them to crush their darker-skinned enemies of primitive cultures, and then imposing their language, religion, and genetic dominance over half of the known world couldn't actually be historical reality, right? In the vast open grasslands of the Pontic Caspian steppe, horses were essential for traveling wide distances. Domestication of the horse, invention of the wheel, and the use of wagons and chariots meant that these steppe cultures were unmatched in mobility. Archaeological evidence shows that dogs also traveled with these nomadic herders. Domestic dogs were equally vital companions, helping with hunting, guarding camps, and controlling livestock. As these communities spread across vast distances, they carried with them their traditions, their languages, and their beliefs. And as they expanded and mixed, sometimes violently, with other civilizations, they reshaped the people that they came into contact with, giving rise to genetic and cultural admixtures. This German cigarette trading card from the early 20th century, titled Methods of Warfare by Ancient Peoples, depicts the Aryan people as Indo-Iranians in their Assyrian Stratwagen, or war chariot, rolling across the steppes on horse-powered chariots and using them to crush their darker-skinned enemies and impose culture upon them. And in the Middle East, what were the Hittites and the Mitanni doing? Oh, that's right, they were rolling across the Middle East on horse-powered chariots and using them to crush their probably darker-skinned enemies to impose culture upon them. And in the northern part of the Indian subcontinent, the ancient Vedic Aryans were rolling across the Indian subcontinent on horse-powered chariots and using them to crush their darker-skinned enemies to impose culture upon them. Archaeological, linguistic, and genetic evidence support the theory that Indo-Aryan-speaking peoples entered the Indian subcontinent from the northwest during the 2nd millennium BC, bringing their language, cultural practices, and religion with them. Their culture eventually produced the Vedic tradition, whose earliest text is the Rig Veda. Their language developed into Vedic Sanskrit, the ancestor of classical Sanskrit, that later then developed into several Indian languages such as Hindi, Bengali, Punjabi, and Gujarati. The term Aryan came from the Indo-Iranian word Arya, meaning noble or one of culture. The country Iran means land of the Aryans. The Bhagavad Gita, or the Song of the Lord, is one of the most important and widely read texts in Hinduism. This 700-verse Sanskrit scripture forms a small part of the Mahabharata, the Great Bharata, the sons of the legendary King Bharata. The story takes place on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, on the eve of a climactic battle between two branches of a noble family who have amassed massive armies. The Pandavas, the righteous side led by Arjuna and his brothers, and their cousins the Kauravas, who have usurped the throne. Arjuna, who is the greatest warrior of his age, sees many of his relatives among his enemies and despairs. Arjuna is filled with doubt, and he wonders if he should renounce his duty and just leave the battlefield. What begins as a philosophical dialogue between Arjuna and his charioteer Krishna, who is somewhat secretly an avatar of the supreme god manifested in physical form. Arjuna talks with God himself about the nature of reality, the performance of a man's duty or dharma, and building connection or yoga to God. After Arjuna spends literally the entire first chapter crying about how he just wants to give up, I'm not even kidding you, the first thing that Krishna, God himself, tells Arjuna is, "You're not being a very good Aryan right now." This is all highly un-Aryan. I expected more from an Aryan Arjuna. Sri Bhagavan Uvaka, the Blessed Lord, said, "O Arjuna, how has this delusion overtaken you at this critical moment? It is unworthy of an Aryan, leading neither to heaven nor to honor." The word used, anarya, literally means un-Aryan, translated as without culture, not knowing the value of life, or unmanly, literally the opposite of an Aryan. But don't take my word for it. Listen to A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder of the International Krishna Consciousness Society. Aryan means advanced in spiritual knowledge. That is Aryan civilization. Krishna rebuked Arjuna. "You're talking like a non-Aryan." This Krishna consciousness movement is meant for creating Aryans. Civilization means Aryan. Formerly, the whole world was called Aryavarta, the land of the Aryans. But now, it is gradually diminishing. Therefore, we have to revive Aryan civilization by spreading Krishna consciousness. We are trying to make non-Aryans into Aryans. One who understands his duty to God, he is Aryan. One who does not, he is Anaryan. That is the difference. Actually, the whole world was Aryan, but now they become Anarya without Aryan culture. The Krishna consciousness movement is trying to revive Aryan culture. The whole world is in chaos because they have given up on Aryan culture. They do not know what real civilization is. Real civilization is Krishna consciousness. This Krishna consciousness refers to a consciousness that comes from connecting oneself with the unknowable infinite oneness of the Supreme God. The concept of a supreme transcendent being whose nature is outside of human logic, who is infinite oneness and exists outside of time, who was, is, and shall be, is beyond the reach of the finite human mind. The ultimate nature of God is entirely unknowable. The incomprehensible magnitude of the divine being is fundamentally beyond human comprehension, and the feeling that this mystery evokes is often described as awe or fear, as if trying to comprehend the infinite drives one mad like a Lovecraftian vision. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna requests that Krishna show him his supreme infinite form. Krishna agrees, but warns it is not something ordinary eyes can behold. Krishna grants Arjuna divine vision so that he can perceive it, then reveals his infinite form to Arjuna. The vision fills Arjuna with overwhelming majesty and terror. Unable to bear the intensity any longer, Arjuna pleads for Krishna to withdraw the vision. Though men seek to know the infinite oneness of the Supreme Being, their finite mind is incapable of understanding it. This unknowable mystery and the sense of awe at seeking a direct personal union with the infinite is what we call mysticism. No doubt a similar sense of awe filled Indo-European people in the vast grasslands of the Eurasian steppes as they stared out into a vast, clear blue daylight sky that must have appeared endless. With no mountains or forests to break the horizon, herders driving their cattle and horses would look up into an immense, seemingly infinite sky, bright and clear amid the harsh and unpredictable life on Earth. The vast, endless sky was a source of light and a silent witness of every action they undertook throughout their entire life. A prehistoric nomadic culture, who moved along vast plains, was incapable of transporting large stone and wooden idols in fixed locations in order to maintain their worship. These nomadic cultures required a de-anthropomorphized god who moved along with them. They emphasized universal, transcendent powers that were visible everywhere. The sky, the sun, the wind and the clouds which brought the storms and thunder were portable altars not bound to one spot. Sublime symbols of an unknowable fatherly cosmic order which existed in the heavens above the uncertain, constantly changing fertile earth with its motherly cycles. The vast, bright daytime sky became a symbol for the infinite, omnipresent, unknowable Father in the sky or the heavens, who maintained cosmic order by bringing rain which gave life and fertility to a Mother Earth. Cattle were central to ancient life. They provided renewable, nutrient-rich food sources such as milk, butter, cheese, and yogurt. Oxen pulled carts, plows, and wagons, enabling large-scale agriculture and transport. While the ox plows the field, it also poops, providing a free nutrient-rich fertilizer to boost crop yields. Dried cow poop was also burned as a heating source. Cattle provided meat and leather and could be traded as a form of currency. Cattle as property were associated with wealth and with kings. With their survival dependent on agriculture, the cow took on a divine-like quality as a symbol of abundance and fertility. In the mythology of some of these ancient cultures, the earth is made from the sacrifice of the primordial cow, whose body produces the world and nourishes the life of plants and animals. Ritual cattle sacrifice was then seen as an essential practice for maintaining the natural order. Also, that's why his skin is blue. Because I know somebody's going to ask me that. Why is his skin blue? Because his body is the endless, infinite sky. Krishna's name means dark-complected one, referring to his blue to dark blue-black skin, which is compared to bright as the enchanting sky and dark like a rain-bearing cloud, and like the blue-black of the sky at twilight between day and night, representing the vast infinite cosmos. Two of Krishna's other names, Gopala and Govinda. Gopala means cow protector or cow shepherd. Govinda means cow finder or chief herdsman. These nomadic steppe herders saw the daylight sky that stretched out across the vast grasslands as unreachable, yet always present and filled with light, a force that kept watch over these ancient people as they herded their livestock. The return of the sun and the daylight meant the renewal of life and the cosmic order. The bright heavens of the day naturally led many cultures to associate the sky with the celestial realm of the divine. The ultimate nature of God is entirely unknowable. The inaccessible, ever-present yet out-of-reach heavens of the daylight sky served as a visualization for this unknowable, omnipresent power. This inability to express the profoundness of the infinite within the limitations of human visual language led to the popular image of the man in the sky who watches over us. When the finite mind attempted and failed to comprehend the infinite, unknowable supreme being, what felt most instinctive, most reassuring was to reach for the familiar. Surely then, God must be a man in the clouds who sees everything, looking down on us like a father from his heavenly throne. God resides in the heavens above, maintaining a cosmic order and bestowing life to the world by making sure that the sun rises exactly when it's supposed to. Gazing down upon his creation with a hand of authority and judgment, as well as a hand of compassion and mercy. A day man, if you will. A fighter of the night man. The champion of the sun. A master of karate and friendship for everyone. Day, the glorious light of the Creator, is sent by the Lord. It is beloved of men, a source of hope and happiness to rich and poor, and service to all, and friendship for everyone. Gazing upwards into the boundless daylight sky, the ancient Indo-European peoples offered their prayers, spoken in their own ancestral tongue, to our Father who art in heaven. Pater nos, es Dievi. The word for daylight sky or the heavens, Yahweh, is the basis for the English word day. There is a notable phonological similarity between the Proto-Indo-European word for day, Yahweh, and the commonly accepted pronunciation of the name of the God of the Israelites. Hashem, the name or the tetragrammaton, the unpronounceable divine four-letter name of God. Yod-He, Vav-He, a combination of the verb lehiot, to be, in past, present, and future tense. Haya, he was. Hove, he is. Ehyah, he will be. Hashem exists in the past, present, and future at the same time. This name was historically forbidden from being spoken aloud by anyone except the high priest, who was permitted to pronounce it exactly one day a year on Yom Kippur. The Proto-Indo-European root word Diawi, meaning daylight sky, became the origin of the Indo-European name for God, Dieus. Thanks to linguistic drifting, such as Grimm's Law, where Proto-Indo-European consonant sounds shift as the Germanic branch develops, so a P becomes an F sound and a D becomes a T sound. That's how pod became a foot and pater became father. Diawi, the daylight sky, becomes Diaus or Devos, the word for God, and Diaus Pater, God the Father or the Sky Father. These names for God linguistically shift but stay consistent across Proto-Indo-European speaking people. In the Hittite tradition, God becomes Sius and Diwi. In Vedic Sanskrit, it becomes the sky god Diaus or Diaus Pater, the Sky Father. In Greek, Zeus Pater becomes Zeus Pater, Zeus the Father. In the ancient Roman tradition, the name for God, Deus, is combined with the word for father, Pater, Jus Pater, which becomes the Roman god, Jupiter. In Germanic, Theos becomes the Norse god, Tyr. Diaus is the root for the words divine, divinity, and the Latin word for God, Deus, in Spanish, Dios, or in metal, Dio. Also, there happened to be this guy named Jesus, whose Hebrew name, Yeshua, meant delivered by Yah, a shortening of the tetragrammaton. The Proto-Indo-European image of the Sky Father, over time and cultural shift, is eventually adopted into the Abrahamic tradition and becomes the Christian interpretation of God the Father, the old man in the clouds who watches over us. This 4th century silver coin has the image of a bearded man on a winged chariot that some scholars believe to be the only known depiction of the Israelite God, while other scholars disagree, saying it is more likely that the image is that of the god Zeus. While I believe that it is far more likely that the deity depicted on the coin is Zeus or Jupiter or Jove, which would have been pronounced Jove, the fact that there is a doubt, even among scholars, highlights just how slight the distinctions between a Semitic and a Proto-Indo-European depiction of God in this era could be. Naturally, with trade and intercultural exchange, Proto-Indo-European speakers and Semitic speakers shared many words in common, as shared terms relating to agriculture and livestock could have facilitated trade. Known as a wanderwort, or wanderwords, a word that is spread as an adopted loanword through language contact, often spread through trade networks. These words migrate outside of their language family. The Proto-Semitic word for bull, tar, becomes Hebrew shore, and Proto-Indo-European taros becomes Latin taurus, Greek tauros, Sanskrit stura, and English steer. The Proto-Indo-European word for cow, gao, becomes English cow, and gao in Sanskrit, such as Krishna's name, Gopala. The Semitic word for cow, goa, is the sound that a cow makes, moo or goa. It means to bellow. The Proto-Indo-European root of the English word bull also means to bellow. Bell, also the root of the word bellow. The word for the earth, meaning the soil, the ground, and the place that we live, may also be one of these wander words. In Hebrew, earth is eretz. E-er-tz. In Proto-Indo-European, the earth is erta. E-er-ta. Erta becomes German Erde, Dutch Aarde, and English earth. These are the groupings of Noah's descendants according to their origins by their nations, and from these the nations branched out over the earth after the flood. And in those times, everyone on the earth had the same language and the same words. In the book of Genesis, Noah builds a massive ark to survive the great flood. Noah takes with him his wife, his 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japhet, and each son's wife. They all stay inside of the ark while it rains for 40 days and nights and the flood waters cover the whole earth. When the ark rests on dry ground on the mountains of Ararat, Noah and his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives come out of the ark. God blesses them and tells them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." After an awkward family incident involving a convoluted strategy to moonwalk a blanket onto their naked father without accidentally witnessing the ancient forbidden twig and berries, Noah blessed Shem and Japhet that they would share a special relationship with God in the tents of Shem. Noah cursed Canaan, Ham's son, for mocking his nakedness, saying he would be a servant to his brothers. The sons of Noah, B'nai Noach, who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japhet, Ham being the father of Canaan. These 3 were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole world branched out. Elohim shall enlarge, Yaft Japhet, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be a servant to them. If it's true that an antediluvian civilization existed in the Black Sea region, which was destroyed and lost to time due to catastrophic flooding, the dispersal patterns of displaced migration out of this area would reflect the sons of Noah and the Table of Nations. Japhet's line moving into Europe, Shem's into the Near East and Arabia, and Ham's into Egypt and North Africa. The Levant sat at the crossroads for this migration. Displaced groups could have moved into Anatolia, the Caucasus, and the steppes and river valleys of Eastern Europe, becoming the ancestors of the Indo-European-speaking peoples, the sons of Japhet, while others consolidated in the Near East, becoming the Semitic speakers, Sumerian, Akkadian, and Hebrew traditions, the sons of Shem. Rabbi Haya bar Abba said, "This is the reason that we allow a Sefer Torah to be written in Greek, as it is written, God shall enlarge Japhet." Yaft, enlarge, is etymologically similar to the Hebrew term for beauty, Yafeh. The beauty of Japhet shall be in the tents of Shem, which is to say, from the beauty of the children of Japhet, which is the Greek language, which is exceedingly beautiful, and meanwhile the Torah dwells in the tents of Shem, for it is permissible to have the Torah in their language. And all of this is because they, the Greeks, have exceeding wisdom compared to all other nations. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, even with regard to Torah scrolls, the sages permitted them to be written only in Greek. Torah scrolls written in any other language do not have the sanctity of a Torah scroll. The Mishnah cites that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, even with regard to Torah scrolls, the sages permitted them to be written only in Greek. Rabbi Abahu said that Rabbi Yohanan said, the halakha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. And Rabbi Yohanan said, what is the reason for the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel? He based his opinion on the allusion in the Torah as the verse states, God shall enlarge Japhet, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, indicating that the words of Japhet shall be in the tents of Shem. The language of Yavan, who is the forebear of the Greek nation and one of the descendants of Japhet, will also serve as a sacred language in the tents of Shem where the Torah is studied. In the mythology of the Greeks, they believed they were descendants of a figure known as Iapetus. Iapetus was a titan, linked to Japhet, one of the sons of Noah and a progenitor of mankind in biblical accounts. The sons of Japhet shall expand, just as the Proto-Indo-European speaking people expanded across the known world, with the beauty of their language carving empires, epics, and philosophies into the history of the world. Yet they dwell in the tents of Shem, rooted in the ancient Semitic wisdom of their alphabet and the spiritual inheritance of law, covenant, and divine revelation. And in the unknowable oneness of the hidden source, the unchanging one who was, who is, and shall ever be, there may they find true homecoming. It is the kavod, the glory of Elohim, to conceal a word. Ukavod Melakim, and the glory of kings to examine a word. So here we are, born to be kings. We're the princes of the universe. We are immortal. We have inside us blood of kings. From the dawn of time we came, moving silently down through the centuries, living many lives. Carrying that ancient past of our ancestors in our words and our alphabet. An instrument not only of reading and writing, but for connecting us to the ancient past of our ancestors. The alphabet is not just a tool for writing. The letters function as the primordial DNA of reality itself. The letters are channels for vibrational energies to receive and transmit the Creator's force into the physical world. They serve as the instrument of connection between the spiritual and the physical realms. The word for letter also means an emanation, an omen, or a sign. Each letter is a sign or an emanation of divine energy. Studying the meaning of these letters can reveal hidden links or deeper meanings within words or within Bible verses. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. The ultimate reality is one. Fundamental existence without division. The goal of mysticism is building a direct union to that infinite source or absolute reality, transcending the illusion of ordinary dualistic perception. Transcendence of the limited ego self into direct contact with that one, which is ultimate reality. An infinite God who exists as non-dualistic oneness, who was, is, and shall be, who exists outside of time, is inconceivable to the human mind. An impoverished person thinks that God is an old man with white hair sitting on a wondrous throne of fire that glitters with countless sparks. Imagining this and similar fantasies, the fool corporealizes God. He falls into one of the traps that destroy faith. His awe of God is limited by his imagination. But if you are enlightened, you know God's oneness. You know that the divine is devoid of bodily categories. These can never be applied to God. The ultimate absolute nature of God is unknowable, even terrifying to behold in its fullness. When Krishna reveals his infinite form to Arjuna, he declares, "Time itself am I am death, destroyer of worlds, whose purpose is destruction. In spite of thy efforts, all those who stand before you shall not escape death. Even without you, Arjuna, all these warriors drawn up for battle in their opposing ranks will eventually cease to exist. The first century mystic Rabbi Akiva was an illiterate shepherd until the age of 40. One day, he noticed water steadily dripping onto a rock, eventually carving a hole into it. If soft water can penetrate hard stone through persistence, then the words of the Torah can help us penetrate that unknowable infinite reality. Rabbi Akiva went to his son's teacher, who wrote Aleph and Bet on a tablet. From there, he learned the entire alphabet letter by letter, eventually mastering the entire Torah, emerging as one of the greatest sages of his generation. No one is too old or too far behind to begin. Simply starting with the letters Aleph and Bet can lead one to the highest spiritual greatness. This path of mystic wisdom is not fortune-telling, nor is it witchcraft. It's not devil worship or divination. It's not for self-help, nor for summoning demons. It's not for gaining special powers through Aleister Crowley butt sex magic, and it's not some dumb New Age Hollywood trend. It is specifically for deepening a connection between ourselves and the infinite. The alphabet allows for deeper insights into the mysteries of reality. It shows us that nothing is random. Every word contains within it the potential to bring an idea into existence. Speech is the instrument that creates reality. In the beginning was the Word. If you understand what each letter means by its shape, its numerical value, or by its symbolism, you can unlock deeper meanings within creation. Thanks for watching. I hope you got something from this video. Stay tuned for the next video in this series.